You're listening to a special edition Zweig Letter podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting guru Mark Zweig and his team of experts straight talk in your ear. Mark has more than 30 years of experience helping AEP and environmental firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver his invaluable management, industry, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter and the Zweig Letter podcasts let you develop professionally, wherever you are.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Zweig Letter podcast. Our goal is to bring you some of the best and brightest minds that the AEC industry has to offer. Today, I think I found one of the brightest minds ever to make it on the show. I actually put a tie on just for this special occasion. but I am totally honored and pleased to welcome Mr. John Ozzie Nelson Jr. to the show. Ozzie, as he is known in most circles, is chairman and CEO of Nelson. Nelson is an almost 40-year-old global architecture, design, and consulting services firm with a network of teammates in 35 different locations. Nelson provides strategic and innovative solutions that impact the environments of their clients across the street and around the world. So, Ozzie, it's great to have you join us on the Zweig Letter interview series. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and Nelson beyond what I just shared a second ago?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Reddy. I hope to live up to half of that introduction. So very, very kind of you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, we have been a fast-growing firm. As you said, we are global in nature, design, architecture, consulting, and then under our umbrella have an affiliate engineering firm by the name of Brinjack. So I think what's interesting about our story is not only the growth, but as I say to people, I'd love to say that I thought I sat in the ivory tower and came up from some grand vision, but I think what we've done well is read and respond to the market. I often say to people that want to give some kind of accolades for being an entrepreneur that what really people don't see is the black bear that's chasing me, which is market change, and I think we have stayed ahead of that bear. So anyhow, I look forward to our conversation.
Okay, well, great. Well, so I mean, obviously there are a million different directions that I could go in, and you've cut your teeth in a number of different ways in the design space, and I think a couple of the narratives I'd certainly like to discuss. One is that the first is that you're a second generation to run the company. Your dad started the company.
That is correct.
And so what made you graduate from college and come back home and join your dad's firm?
Again, a lot of opportunity. There's a lack of other jobs, but the reality was, what I saw in the beginning, and really came to feel wasn't there, and then was kind of re-engaged when corporate outsourcing started. Was I have a business degree. I'm one of the I don't know if I'm one of the few. I used to be one of the few CEOs of a design and architectural firm that came from a business background as opposed to a design or architectural background. But so I joined my father's 14-person business with the idea that I could create a larger business and create some scale. And I guess a couple of years into that, it seemed like the craziest thing I had ever done. Here I was in this boutique creative environment. And just as I really started to think it was not a good fit, was when we had the opportunity to do an outsource for Cigna Insurance, in which Cigna found a partner in us and outsourced 20 people. We became their ongoing partner. And then for the next, decade would really change the business from what I said was kind of a retail business to a wholesale business.
Okay.
In that we were handling batches of projects as part of a relationship as opposed to chasing one-offs. I think the thing that is interesting about joining my father's firm as opposed to any other firm is he had come into the industry after working in a dealership for 15 years. So not only did he have a very good design sense, he really had a good sense for service and quality and relationship, which I think is a hallmark that we still continue today.
Okay. So Cigna was your first foray into outsourcing your services for the most part. Tell me a little bit about how the other designers in your dad's firm welcomed you in. Was it acrimonious? Was it welcoming with open arms? Because I know that a lot of times that architects and engineers can bite if you're not part of their plan, if you will. And you know what I'm talking about. And so there seems to be that, not that you're an anomaly in the design space, because there are others that are leading businesses that have a pure business background and not a pure design background. But tell me what that was like.
I would kind of jump forward to today. I feel like, very honestly, it's just in the last maybe 5 years that not only our firm but the world kind of gets what I have been trying to do. And all along, I believed that by building relationships along a broad range of service was the way to really capture both high-end design work as well as the day-to-day work, and that we shouldn't differentiate from that. I think that through my career, there's been this very fierce debate about if you do anything but the high-end work, your brand will be somehow degraded and you'll never be able to get those high-end projects. So it is very rewarding to me, and it has been a really bumpy part of my career of people who felt like I didn't have an appreciation for the creative side. I wasn't ultimately trying to build a great design firm. I was just, trying to make it a business that had nothing to do with creativity.
Okay. All right. And so now I know that in the 80s, your dad really is actually a very successful interior designer, right? And he won a ton of awards for interior design and lighting. And then I guess something happened, and this was about the time that you came on board, that the company saw a shift taking place and how firms were being engaged to outsource services. Do you want to, first of all, just kind of describe the services that you're talking about, and then what led you guys to develop and create your integrated services and solutions model?
Sure. So, I often tell a story that I think before outsourcing, the idea was sort of that whether it was the design firm or the engineering firm, they were treated as though they had some sort of disease, and there was sort of some middleman that needed to be between the end user client and the person on the outside.
Right.
And I think in the outsourcing, for firms that took advantage of it, it did require that you develop beyond just your core skill of design or engineering, and that you really were self-policing in terms of having dialogue about outcomes, really being much more aggressive in managing budget. And I do think, quite frankly, the inability of design, architecture, and engineering firms to be able to largely develop in that side really gave birth to the CBRE and JLLs, who have now stepped in to be the outsourced intermediary, if you will. Mm-hmm. And for us, I think the other thing is kind of interesting. A lot of this, again, I would love to say that there was this brilliant strategy. I think what we, in navigating the market, I think we created kind of a series of blue ocean strategies, even though at the time I didn't really appreciate that that's what we were doing. So the big break for us was we started to do outsourcing services. And we had a client in Maryland come to us and ask that we develop what I think is the first occupancy database ever developed.
Okay.
And then that bank was acquired by Nations Bank, which became Bank of America. So for 10 years, really, my gig was wait till Labor Day. Bank of America would buy somebody. We would get a call and we would go into whatever market, whether it was Barnett in Florida or Fleet in Boston. We would look at all of the space that they had acquired. We would develop a post-occupancy merger integration plan that would look to get the real estate synergies. And then they would say to us, well, now you know the space better than us. We'll give you half of the integration, if you will. So we were growing our design business both geographically as well as our relationship with the bank and a couple of other banks. And that all of that was prior to strategic sourcing coming into the equation. And that was really kind of the next change for us. But probably a good decade of our history was really this occupancy planning and then integrating the resulting projects that came out of that.
Okay. All right. So I guess it probably one project led to another, led to another, and led to another, essentially.
Yeah, especially since we were the only firm that I know of that was doing this. So,
Why do you think you didn't have any competition? I mean, nobody else stepped up to the plate or figured it out, or
I think that's where, again, the odd circumstances of somebody with a business degree and mind coming into what is really a creative and sort of boutique industry. And the whole key to that was we were able to download the accounting hierarchy of the banks and translate that hierarchy into space. So if you think of, that's really kind of an accounting and business drill more than as a design drill, although it resulted in design projects. I don't think at that time there were many people in the industry that were thinking that way.
wow. Okay. Man, that's amazing. So is it safe to say that because your firm was involved in the consulting and designing of new spaces for large corporate client mergers that you guys were bitten by the M&A bug? Do you think because of everything that you saw? I mean, you mentioned Bank of America. I remember Nations Bank. I lived in Boston, so I remember Fleet Bank. And, every day you turn up and there's something new. And then before you know it, all these Bank of Americas just popped up everywhere. And so it almost seems like you took an idea that your clients were utilizing to grow and to develop, and you just said, "Hey, you know what? If they're doing it, we should just do it too."
I think twofold to that. Absolutely, that's true. And the fact that we were helping them on the integration side and seeing what all those steps were to integrating and seeing what market penetration they were getting overnight absolutely spawned the idea. I think the other piece was I mentioned strategic sourcing, and what was happening with strategic sourcing was, we had this great gig, this great blue ocean strategy, and then the strategic sourcing guys started to come in, number one, and number two, the heads of corporate real estate who had typically been there for, 15 to 20 years, now were rotating like every 2 or 3 years. And they weren't coming from a real estate background. They were coming from an HR background. They were coming from an administrative background. So there was constantly this new dog and pony show to the strategic sourcing people and the real estate people. And we would consistently get two questions. We were number 38 in the industry, and typically we were teamed with Gensler. And they'd say, well, you're 38 and they're number one. Shouldn't we be talking to 37 other firms in between you guys? And then the other question was, where are your dots on the map? We want fewer partners with more presences. So it was very clear that we needed both scale and a platform if we were going to survive. So that's when I came up with a fairly innovative non-cash strategy, largely because I had no cash to approach other small firms. And we were at that time about 12 million, and we started approaching $2 to $3 million firms to find ways to integrate them into our network. And so in the years between 2003 and 2007, we went from 12 million to 53 million.
Wow.
With through 13 merger acquisitions that we did.
And that was how much again?
It was from 12 million to 53 million.
Wow. Okay. How did you handle all that growth? I mean, that's 5 years, and
it's kind of interesting that while today I would say to you that culture trumps everything. I think that one of the things that we've done different than many companies is the lens through which we look at risk. So if you look at my number one risk driver at that time was not growing fast enough. Okay. It wasn't a lack of culture. It wasn't anything else. So candidly, we looked for firms that had a history of holding on to their clients and a strong history in corporate interiors. And those two tenets really drove this quick integration. I used to say to people would say to me, this firm doesn't look anything like that firm. And my point was that we were building track. And someday we would come back and put trains on the track. But right now we are just laying track, which if you're able to really look at your objectives that simply, you can move very quickly.
Okay. All right. So did you guys create anything proprietary for yourselves to be able to judge and determine these potential acquisitions or mergers in an expedited manner at all?
No, I was probably throughout our history since then, about 50% of my time is M&A.
Okay.
So I'm kind of the front guy, kind of getting off the plane and having that first meeting to see, high level culture goals. Is this a marriage? I think what we do really well is we have developed over the years. We have a merger playbook. We have an integration team. So from the time that we get an LOI with an organization, we do have a pretty methodical way that we go through that process.
Okay. All right. Well, and I'm just curious because I know I always talk with Mark Zweig about M&A, and it's something that interests me. It's not an area that I've worked in a lot. We've spent time. Obviously, we do that here at Zweig Group, and I've been involved in some research on the mergers and acquisition side. But I'm always curious to know, what's been like the quickest deal that you've ever put together, and I'm just curious as to why it was done so fast.
That's very interesting. I think. I would probably look to some of the earlier ones. Bank of America after 9/11, we were doing a lot of the work in New York for the bank, and 9/11 happened, and there was obviously they had space in the tower, and they were going to be relocating very quickly. And I would say that we established a partnership with a firm and had the paperwork signed within, I don't know, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks. So we had to move quickly, very immediately. I would say that our deals today, I actually have some that I have negotiated for years. The Koch merger that we just closed this week or last week, Ian Koch, he was tracking, I wasn't, but he said it was 27 months that we were talking. Okay. I would say that these days, probably the average time frame is somewhere between 6 to 9 months from the initial conversation to the close.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. I always like to tell this story, but whenever I talk with Mark about this, his biggest challenge for leaders in the design space is that sometimes they're a little slow to act. And, he always tells a story about Jerry Allen. This is a true story, but Jerry Allen, who was a mentor of Mark Zweig's, one time Mark called him with a potential acquisition company. And I guess by the end of that day, Jerry Allen was on a flight to go out and see that individual. And on the flight back, he called Mark and said, it's done. He had the paperwork in hand and he had put it all together. Mark was like, holy crap, you did not waste any time. And certainly, yes, there are a lot of cowboys in Fort Worth, Texas, but Jerry Allen did not allow any grass to grow under his feet. And Mark always uses that illustration to say that if a deal looks good, you really need to seriously consider it and not overanalyze it, because you can get into that paralysis of analysis.
Yeah, I think that it's, first of all, I'm having so much fun with what I'm doing and what we're doing. There has been an evolution where, in the beginning, as I said, it was a pretty linear process where I was looking for geography partners that had corporate interiors. If, to some degree, the first test was, can they fog a mirror? And then you got to go from there.
Right.
To today, we're doing we have such a target rich environment that we want to make sure that we pick teams that have the right leadership. And we want to make sure that no one deal is going to be disproportionate to where our time goes and that we don't get the accretive value out of it. So I think the greater number that you're doing and the larger that you are, it is important to become selective. And yet, I find myself bringing our integration and our leadership team in sooner and sooner. Mm-hmm. My job is to be a chief deal maker and to continue to challenge what is the value of this firm. Are we sure we want to pass on this? And on the other hand, there are all these operating people who are ultimately going to have to own this and hit the goals. And I think it's really important to create an environment where they can absolutely say to me, I think we should walk from this, hate this deal. And on the other hand, they can look at life through my lens of where they may see a value. I may see a value that they don't, but it's important that we have this rich dialogue around the deal.
Okay. All right. Well, obviously communication is everything when it comes to these, because as you and I both know that, and I've heard this before from others in our office, that deals can break down because of lack of communication. And,
no question. And, and I think right size egos is, such an important part of it as well on both sides. By the way, you were talking about Mark. I want to give Mark a plug here. In the years of 2015 to 16, we grew from 40 million to 80 million. And the vast majority of the credit for that growth goes to Mark, who said to me, was talking to Mark about this deal that I was trying to get done in the Bay Area. And I was really frustrated that I'd lost, 18 months trying to do deals in the Bay Area. And Mark said, why don't you step back? He said, think about what you want to build in the end. And there's this, it sounds like there's this geography diversity, there's this service diversity, and there's market vertical diversity. And if you start to look at firms through those three lenses instead of the one of just pure geography, you might find more targets in the environment. And, son of a gun, it's just the whole world opened for us by just using a different lens. And that was throughout 30 years. That was some of the best advice that I ever got. So
okay, all right, yeah. Mark has his way. I will say that he convinced me to come from Boston to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So he clearly is. He is skilled in more ways than one. So
there is more knowledge under that funny hat than you would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he'll be excited to hear that. So you became CEO of Nelson in 2003. You've just completed the 34th merger or acquisition, and the most recent one was just completed just a few days ago. I think it might have been June 1st, 2017, as of this recording. Tell us about the significance of this last merger, just in particular.
Yeah, so it was two mergers that we announced one in 2-day increments. So one on the 31st, one on June. So the first was Koch Industries, which is a core and shell architectural firm out of Philadelphia, and the second was KA, a core and shell architectural firm out of Cleveland, Ohio. Both are firms, Koch Industries working in the mixed use hospitality office market, KA working in the office, mixed use and retail spaces. So a richness of things that we got from both of these deals. Number one, culturally, just a home run in terms of firms that I feel and leaders that I feel like we've worked with for a very long time. But in both cases, very solid firms in terms of Koch Industries in terms of the technical and the creative. KA, very, very strong in the technical side and understanding of retail, but really needed to be part of a broader network in order to better service their clients. Really benefit from a lot of the focus that we have put on design. And finally, we have for a long time aspired to get into larger scale architecture. Koch Industries not only brings large scale, but they bring high rise. The first major project that will be completed under the Nelson name is a 51-story W Hotel in downtown Philadelphia.
Wow.
Which is really cool. And then KA has done very large malls, very large office structures. So it sets us up now with a core and shell and high-rise capability that we can service our clients across the country.
Okay. All right. So now you're going to really be busy. So I'd hate to ask you what's next on the horizon for you guys. Now, you did mention something to me earlier, and I don't know. And again, you'll have to excuse if I don't know something. I always ask about it. But you mentioned a blue ocean strategy. Could you define that?
Sure. So there was a book a number of years ago. I wish I could think of the author right now. But the book's Blue Ocean Strategies. If folks listening to this Google it, they'll absolutely find it. But the premise was that if you look at where most competition happens, it's where the sharks are all competing in the densely populated fish area. So the water becomes very red and very bloody. And that if you step back, you want to go to parts of the competitive landscape or the ocean, if you will, that's blue, where you may be able to provide service or sell your product in a less intense environment because you've kind of developed your own place that you're fishing, if you will.
Yeah.
So back to what we were doing is instead of selling design services, we were actually doing this occupancy planning, which then led to design services. So when we were winning projects that didn't even go out to bid, people couldn't figure out how we were getting the projects.
Right.
So that would be a very different way. I'd say today this whole merger acquisition, in a lot of ways, at the scale that we're doing it and in the niches that we're doing it, I think a different way to go about building a large firm that's going to customize around the industry need.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. That was a good piece of education there, and we will certainly add some of that on our show notes so people can go and look that up. But that's actually really helpful information. And I know there's a saying that you get rich with the niche, it really is true. And with that said, I'd be curious to know what are your thoughts about some of the biggest challenges or threats that we face in the design industry as a whole. I know talent is a major issue. That's the area that I work in. That's my bailiwick, if you will, and dealing with recruitment strategies and just finding good people. They're just, we are dealing with not an infinite, but a finite set of resources when it comes to good talent. And I'm assuming that that's even a challenge for you guys. But what do you see as the biggest threats right now for our industry?
I think that's, the thing I'd say about talent is not only attracting talent. I would say that we live in a very transparent and more transparent world than we have ever lived in. Yeah. So the idea that you're either going to, quote unquote, attract people to an organization that isn't progressive and isn't everything that people would like to work in, that's very challenging. I also think that a lot has been written about the differences of the generations, and really genuinely creating a workplace around what the various generations are looking for. For instance, millennials are not only looking for flexibility, they're looking for a sense of family and a sense of place. Mm-hmm. So, you could, whatever it is, give free food and coffee and all the other stuff all day long. But if you don't have this environment where people get together socially after work and that you create this environment of extended family, you're going to have a chance. You may get people in the door, but you'll have a hard time keeping them.
Yeah.
I think post downturn, what our strategy really pivoted from this idea of what the previous blue ocean was, which was a lot of the occupancy strategy. And we found a lot of competitors coming into that workplace. So what we decided was that we were going to diversify along geography and vertical and service lines, again, along the lines of the conversation with Mark. Nobody knows when some new virus is going to break out that's going to affect some part of the world, right, or when we're going to go to war with some country, or when we're going to have another economic downturn. So the inability to really predict the future necessitates, I think, that we're diversified around a lot of counter-cyclical industries. So if you think of, one of the investments that we'll make this year is actually into K through 12 in California, something I would have not thought of doing 5 years ago. But if you think about the fact that the bonds now are fully funded in California and will be funded for the next 10 years, no matter what happens to the economy, the bonds will keep flowing.
Right.
So we continue to look at the world in that very high risk, unpredictable way. And I think that and the people side that you talked about are the two probably biggest challenges.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes perfect sense. And diversification is key, I think, for any healthy business, is to not just have one cookie jar to keep your hands in, but you got to have multiple. So we all like choices, I think.
And then the final thing I would add to that is not only the unpredictability, but the rate of change. So I think that not only do you need to look at this diversification strategy, the unfortunate news for leaders and CEOs who want to be done is we're never done. So, once you do get to the top three of a vertical, you're now not only a leader, you're a target. Right?
Yeah,
you absolutely. Have to continue to reinvent yourself to stay in that leadership spot.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Well, no, I appreciate that. That is some good That's some good advice and feedback. I think there's some young owners out there of design firms that it's gonna be really helpful for them. I've actually had a couple of other people on the show that have talked specifically about M&A and their kind of strategies, and it's interesting to hear from some different people. I don't know if you know Tony Mirchandani from RTM. And
Yes.
there's some other people, and Tony pretty much does all of his M&A work internally, similar to how you guys operate, and they've had some success. And so it's interesting to see how different people are doing different things. But obviously, you've kind of set the standard for what that looks like. So I certainly applaud you. And with all that, with everything that Ozzie Nelson is doing, you are a trustee and two-time board chair of Students Today, Leaders Forever, which is a nonprofit organization recognized by Time Magazine as one of the top 10 ways to give back. You've chaired the Young Presidents Organization of the Twin Cities chapter. I mean, I could go on. And I know a lot of times we like to focus on the business exploits of individuals, but you have found time in your busy schedule to give back. And can you just talk just a little bit about that and about the importance of it, right? Because it's not about how many mergers or acquisitions you can do at the end of the day, but certainly I think a legacy is also important beyond the business exploits of the world. And I would just be curious just to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would I would say that particularly over the last 2 to 3 years for me, there's been I've always been an aggressive entrepreneur. I would say a lot of that involvement, and even in terms of the personal satisfaction I take out of what we're doing as a firm, has to do for me personally around core attributes and qualities of humility and connection with other people. And I have found that particularly when you do start to get some of the traction in areas that you have long wanted to, those can pretty quickly become empty if there isn't a purpose behind that really has a tangible impact for people. So both in terms of what I do in the community, but just as importantly, the opportunities that I'm blessed to steward here at Nelson are really the things that get me up in the morning, and the things that make me feel like what I'm doing is a lot more important than kind of dollars and cents.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I certainly applaud you, and I just personally thank you for setting that kind of example, because I think other people need to see that it's, getting up every morning and going out and conquering things and gathering things is important, but also sowing into others is equally as important, if not more so. So it'll be interesting to see who you conjure up as the next Ozzie Nelson, somebody that you've spoken into their lives, and they'll end up doing the same thing and giving back the same way. So I applaud you, and I say thank you very much for that. So
thank you, Randy.
Yeah, no problem. So listen, we're going to finish this up. We're doing something new here on the TZL interview series. We want to go a little deeper for our audience and learn. Not that we haven't already dissected you just a little bit, but that was on the business side. We want to learn who the real Ozzie Nelson is. We have a couple of simple questions that we'll end our interview with, and hopefully we'll have some fun in the process.
That sounds good.
The first question was, what was the last book that you read?
That's interesting. It was the last general book I read was a reflection of Mother Teresa's life. That sounds corny, but it looked interesting. And then the other one, I can't think of it. I was just talking to somebody about it the other day. It's the something of Wichita. It's the Koch brothers story, and was a fascinating read. About the kind of the wars that went on between the Koch brothers and the building of Koch Industries.
Koch Industries, yeah, right there in Kansas. That's right next door to us here in Arkansas.
Near
you too.
So you know it well.
I do know it well. Absolutely, absolutely. So actually, I know some people that work for the Koch Industries and Koch family, and I've never talked to someone that works for them that hasn't said they're really well taken care of. Those guys actually run a pretty sharp operation. So.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of option B, which is that Sandra Sandberg, I think it is. She's the COO of Facebook, and her husband's the one right on treadmill.
Yeah.
And very, very inspirational book.
Yeah, she's sharp. She's sharp too. I really like Sheryl Sandberg, so she's sharp. Okay, so you got some good books on the shelf. If where did you go on your last vacation?
We went to Jamaica as a family. Yeah,
Okay.
it was my wife, and my son and I have an unusual family split. I have all with the same wife. I have a daughter that'll be 26 next week. I have a 21-year-old daughter, and then a 14-year-old son. So I still have a little guy at home.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Well, awesome. So yeah, Jamaica is a lot of fun. So
it is,
and the food is good down there. If you like,
and the people we just love the people.
Yeah, they're very friendly. Very friendly. Now, so given that, with the family and all at home, if you personally could binge watch one TV series, old or new, what would it be?
This Is Us. In fact, my wife and I did binge watch that. We didn't see the first season. And I think over like 2 weekends, we watched the whole
thing.
Oh my gosh. It's very powerful.
It is very powerful. The thing I love about it is that they wrote into the storyline arc, that, the guy is a big Steeler fan because it takes place in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
So
yes.
And all my family's from Pittsburgh, so that was near and dear to my heart. So I enjoyed
that series where I think he proposes to her right
exactly.
at the
Super Bowl. Yeah, absolutely. So it's an amazing story because you're either in one period of time or another, and you got to kind of figure it out. But it's very, very powerful. I mean, the writers for that are amazing. They absolutely are. So a couple of times I looked over to my wife and she was actually crying, and I just let it go.
Yes.
So yeah. So
before that it was Modern Family. We were were glued to Modern Family. So
yeah.
I like the shows that have the best writing is kind of what I gravitate to.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, there are some really good shows like that. So Ozzie, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. It's a Friday afternoon that we finally got this together. I've really wanted to do this, and I appreciate you just obliging me and obliging us here on the Zweig Letter interview series. We really, really appreciate it.
Not at all. It was my great pleasure, and have had and have so much respect for your organization. So it's really my great pleasure.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, will you be coming out to join us at Hot Firm at all? In September?
I am trying to get there. Yes, I am tentatively planning to be there.
Okay. All right. I know, because I know you came and spoke at one of our events, and
I did. And I was supposed to be there last year, and I think I forget what the conflict was, but it's not only is it a great time, it's a great networking time. And for those in the audience, absolutely always get a lot out of it whenever I'm there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, good. Well, I certainly hope our paths cross again soon, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Folks, I want to encourage you today to get a free subscription of Civil plus Structural Engineer magazine. And to sweeten the pot, we are throwing in a couple of issues of the Zweig Letter too. Just out of curiosity, Ozzie, do you read the Zweig Letter at all?
I do read the Zweig Letter.
Okay. All right. Do you know, or are you aware that we have a new program now where we're offering the Zweig Letter to whole companies where everybody that has an email address gets a free copy of the Zweig Letter? Are you familiar with that?
I was not familiar with that.
Okay. All right. We'll have to talk with you about that offline. But for all of you that are listening to this, just visit tzl.zweiggroup.com and leave us your email address. We'll take care of the rest. Everything will be delivered to you electronically. As a reminder, all Zweig Group media programs like this one are available in both podcast and, in some occasions, video format, free for download on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube, just to name a few places. A link to all of this information, including contact information for our guests, will be in our show notes. And we'd love it if you'd go to iTunes or wherever you tune into this show and give us a 5-star rating and share this link with a friend. Sharing is caring. I'm Randy Wilburn, and you've been listening to Zweig Group Media, part of Zweig Group. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this special edition Zweig Letter podcast. We hope that you can apply Mark's no-holds-barred advice to your daily professional life. For a free copy of the Zweig Letter, please visit info.zweiggroup.com/freetzl. If you want more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about finance, HR, and marketing your firm, start reading and sharing the Zweig Letter today.